All right, good morning, beautiful people.
Good morning.
On behalf of the Southwest Florida Impact Partners and Southwest Florida Enterprise Center, we welcome you to our SBA and FEMA Disaster and Recovery Program training. Unfortunately, our Executive Director, Ms. Phyllis Calloway, is not present to welcome you herself. But she appointed me, Sharika Davis, owner of Roses from Concrete, Public Relations, to welcome you. And we're delighted that you're eager to learn about the SBA FEMA Disaster and Recovery Program and the application process. This training is designed to empower you with the knowledge and skills necessary to navigate the SBA and FEMA support system effectively. Whether you're a small business owner, a community leader, or simply someone interested in helping someone in hard times in recovery. During this training, you'll enjoy lunch provided by Southwest Florida Impact Partners, which you can get up and grab leisurely at your time. We'll provide you with a comprehensive overview of the SBA and FEMA Disaster and Recovery Program, including its objectives, resources, and the step-by-step application process. You'll gain a deeper understanding of how the SBA and FEMA plays a critical role in assisting individuals and businesses during disasters and also recovery. And you'll learn how to access the support you need. Our goal is to equip you with the tools and information to make the application process as straightforward as possible, ensuring that you or others you're helping can receive the necessary assistance swiftly and effectively. Whether you're facing a disaster, recovering from one, preparing for one, or lending a hand to those in need, this training is very valuable. We encourage you to engage actively, ask questions, and please share your experiences as we navigate through the SBA and FEMA Disaster and Recovery Program, and also the application process. We will be doing this together. Let's get started on your journey to becoming proficient in leveraging the SBA and FEMA resources for disaster recovery. Now, I would like to introduce Managing Partner, Mr. LeeFord with Southwest Florida Impact Partners.
You just stepped out.
No, stepped out. You just stepped out. Just stepped in.
So now I would like to introduce Managing Partner, Mr. LeeFord with Southwest Florida Impact Partners.
All right.
Thank you all very much. Listen, I can't help it. I gotta say what I gotta say. I'm disappointed at this. I got all those calls that people said they gonna be here, and I'm gonna get them. I remember almost every one of them. So, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate the SBA and FEMA and what is it?
SBDC.
Thank you. SBDC from Gulf Florida Gulf Coast here this morning. The key here, folks, is don't just, now you're here in this small group, which is good for you. Because when this is over with, before these people leave here, they need to know you and you need to know them. You need to get connected with them. Don't just say, take their car, shake their hand, walk off, because guess what? You're going to forget 30 minutes down the road who it was you talked to. This is to help you, your business, increase your resource opportunity. Because they're sure trying everything they can to get rid of that money. Because that means they're doing their job. Okay? So, I'm going to shut up, leave this alone, and give it back to Sharika. Or you going to have Raphael?
Raphael.
This is Mr. Raphael of SBA, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Rafael Linero. I work for the Small Business Administration Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience. And we're a team here that is working on a pilot project along with FEMA to support recovery and resilience. Not only work on the disaster part, but trying to prepare, as they said, for the next one or the ongoing challenges that you still struggle from Hurricane Ian. I'm joined by our coworkers, Amy Morales, Enrique Melendez, and we also have our FEMA liaison, which is Mr. Hector Villeneuve, who's in the back. So we have our introductions, but I would like to know about each one of you here in this training, so I will start with Mr. Duck here.
Doug Hefner with the SBDC. I have an office right here in the Enterprise Center, and we offer no-cost consulting to you in the way of getting your business going.
Yeah, so Corner Bunton, is EAS Inc. We help to create self-reliance and a growth mindset for disadvantaged youths here in Southwest Florida. And we also have the space here at the Enterprise Center.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Foster, and I have a small business called Peter Dambala Botanical and Vineyard. So basically, that's why I'm here, to see if I could find the support.
Thank you.
Barbara Thompson. I have a small business, Divine Inspiration Admin Services, where I provide administrative services, business startups, 501c3s, tax consultant, tax preparation, bookkeeping, payroll, a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
And I need support.
We'll do our best to work with that today. And then the ladies in the back.
My name is Tiffany Lawson, and I'm a hairstylist at T3 Creations. And my services, I provide and enhance beauty services for women.
Thank you.
My name is Angel Gray. I'm the co-founder of a nonprofit organization, J. Mills Foundation, for low, at-risk youth and also disadvantaged families. And also I have small business services that I do provide for others, like financial services and other solutions.
I'm Albert Ziegler, and I have the Easy Business Network, and I do websites and e-commerce sites and photography and video.
Thank you. So I got my work cut out because we gave an overview of the training, so thank you so much for that. Because basically, we're the Small Business Administration, and we're a federal agency that is dedicated to help business owners. But not only businesses, we help homeowners, renters, and private nonprofits during the time of a disaster. So the objective with this training is to put you in the position to learn about the disaster program and preemptively be ready if we get an additional hurricane or natural disaster. We had a close call with Hurricane Idalia. Thankfully, it didn't impact here, but it was very close. So we don't know what next year is going to look like. So our best efforts to help you guide all the challenges that the disaster program consists so that you're ready for the next one. When we have a major natural disaster, the president, on the request of the governor, can do a presidential declaration of a disaster. During this framework, the Small Business Administration is actually the gateway for other programs. Usually the first step for everyone that suffered from a disaster is to register with FEMA, and that includes businesses. But the reality is that FEMA's mission is to cover homeowners who are in a need of a habitable house. So they don't really support businesses. But if you have, as a homeowner, get referred to SBA, that's part of your process. You need to put SBA in a position to determine if we're able to offer you a disaster loan, which is a better solution because we aim to put you in the same or better position than you were before the disaster. FEMA's mission for homeowners and its primary residences is to make them whole, that they have a habitable house, not really gardens, fences. If you have a small roof on a small hole on your roof, that's pretty much the assistance that FEMA may get you to cover that and your house will be habitable. But SBA disaster loan program for homeowners is broader than that, and another thing that we can do is mitigation, which we'll discuss further. If we're unable to offer you a disaster loan as a homeowner, then we will refer you back to FEMA to see if you're able to get some of those possible grants. So it's very important. A lot of business owners are homeowners, and they also get referred to the SBA. So it's very important that if you get referred to SBA as a homeowner, that you can commit to that process. Then sadly, if we're unable to offer you that disaster loan, we're gonna give you a letter. But that letter may be the gateway for you to get further assistance, as we mentioned, by FEMA, VA, HUD, and any other state or local government agencies. Because we already proved that FEMA is not gonna be there for you, SBA can't, but some other programs, charities, and grants use that decline letter as a way to incentivize the recovery. So we're going to give now an overview of disaster loans. As mentioned before, is activated in conjunction with the approval of a presidential declaration, although certain thresholds can be met, so SBA can do an agency declaration. And that means that the damages are not big enough for the president to declare a major disaster, but the agency can offer support to homeowners and businesses. The only thing is that FEMA will not be involved in that type of declaration because it's just an SBA agency declaration. These disaster loans main purpose is for uninsured or otherwise uncompensated losses. So if you have insurance or if you get money from FEMA, then we're not allowed to give you an obligation of benefits. So it's always good to keep in mind that you're gonna get recoveries for the damages one time. These loans are direct from the federal government and not from a bank. We have other programs that you would have to access, and we can go a little bit into that later. Those are managed by banks. I don't know if you remember the PPP, that was a payment protection program. That was sponsored by SBA, but it was not done through SBA. We did have the economic injury disaster loan, and that's one that we manage internally, and we do that with the US Treasury. So basically, we have two types of loans: physical disaster loans, which are to repair or replace uncompensated disaster damaged property, personal property, equipment, machinery, or we have also the economic injury disaster loan, which is the working capital to help small businesses. On the home disaster side, we can benefit homeowners and renters. And they may be eligible now for up to $500,000 to repair and replace that real estate property, and up to $100,000 for that personal property. Renters may be also eligible for $100,000 for their personal property. As far as businesses and nonprofits for physical damages, they may be eligible for up to $2 million. And on the physical damages, both of them can get up to 20% increase for mitigation for those real estate damages. So if you suffer through floods or the hurricane, you can actually improve your business or your home for a future disaster, and you can do that in any kind of mitigation. Lastly, we have the economic injury disaster loan, which can also be up to $2 million working capital for ongoing expenses. These type of loans, especially the physical ones, we determine those loan amounts with our loss verifier, which is an inspector or insurance adjuster. So we learned a lot from Hurricane Ian, and we're implementing changes that are effective July 31st of this year, and they actually apply to Hurricane Idalia. So first we had the increase from $40,000 to $100,000 for the personal property. They increased from $200,000 to $500,000, which is a 2.5% increase on your primary residence. Now we have made a change, which is permanent. All disaster loans have 12 months, no payments, no interest. So basically, that puts you in a position to be as close as having a grant for that first year. We have also included refinance eligibility and contractual malfeasance to those amounts. And that 20% of verified physical loss used to be that if you suffer from a hurricane, you could only mitigate from hurricane. But in this case, if you know you suffer from the winds, but not from flooding, but you still acknowledge that that's a risk, you can also pursue a mitigation for floods or any natural disaster or even a fire. So these changes were made to expand the disaster loan recipients' options and to reflect the inflation costs that we struggled with within the last year. So we have three basic requirements for these loans. The first one is that the damaged property of the business needs to be in a declared county. Also, the applicant needs to show credit history that is acceptable to SBA. That doesn't mean excellent credit. It just means that it doesn't need to be badly defaulted, especially if you have clear obligations with the federal government. Hopefully you didn't have problems, because that may create issues for you to be eligible for a different program. Also, you need to show that you have capability of repayment. Applicant must show that they can afford that loan, where SBA is never gonna put you in a position to choose between your obligations. In the case of homeowners, groceries, rent, mortgage. If we're not able to offer you a loan, then we'll get you that letter that states so you can pursue any other type of recovery. We have what we call a three-step process. The first one would be to apply for the SBA loan, and the best way that you can do that is do it online. Another alternative, if you struggle with doing the application online, you can visit a disaster recovery center. They're usually set up in the first 72 hours of that disaster. And SBA tends to do business recovery centers in the first 24 to 48 hours. So it's very important for you that if you have a business that is struggling and you're not able to help them directly, then you can also refer them to one of the recovery centers. And lastly, you can also always submit a paper application by mail. But my advice in a natural disaster, mail is not the most effective way to communicate, and you may have delay in processing. Applications get lost in the mail. There may be a backlog of thousands of applications sent in paper, so you may get an answer from your disaster loan between 24 to 48 hours if you do it online, versus sending it by mail and waiting several weeks to get a response. When we're able to offer you a loan, then we're gonna send a loss verifier. So you don't need to get quotes, estimates, or nothing. We're gonna make that for you. We're gonna be able to send that loss verifier to do the assessment of physical damages, and then the loan officer will use your final information, including your taxes, to determine that economic injury. So you're not put in a position to provide, we'll make that assessment for you. So if we approve that loan, after that verification, we're gonna send those documents for you to be able to close that loan, and you can get a disbursement as fast as a couple of weeks after the application and everything goes accordingly. Those disbursements may be made in installments and require you that you submit a series of documents along the way. So usually it's a first disbursement of $25,000, then 50, 100, and so on. Always, if you have any questions that is related to our slides, I always appreciate that to do that. If you have any questions that is unrelated, then I ask you to do when we end the presentation, because some of the questions may be answered by the next slide. So we have a big announcement. Based on those lessons learned from last year, we are currently transitioning from a disaster loan portal into the unified lender platform. So as mentioned before, we have different departments in our agency. You would be able to get access to capital loan through a bank. You may have a COVID loan, and you may have a disaster loan. So it used to be that you had 3 different websites that you had to visit to see all of your relationships with SBA. So now, from now on that unified lending platform, you should be able to see everything there. You don't need to be navigating through those different portals. So My SBA is a web-based platform in which you can view details, make payments, and access statements for COVID, SBA disaster assistance, and SBA service loans. In My SBA loan portal, you can also make a disaster loan application. So basically, those are those websites, and they're provided to you in the application. So make sure that we register and put your email legible so we can send that application to you. You can still use the disaster loan portal, but we're gonna just forward you to the lending.sba.gov. So if you go to apply online on the disaster loan portal, once you click on search for the disaster, you're gonna be navigating into the new platform, which is My SBA loan portal. As you can see, it has the information for PPP, COVID, and the disaster loans. So if you want to apply for a disaster loan, this is where you would click to start your process. In this case, you're going to be prompted to determine your location to see which residential declarations or agency declarations may be available to you. In this case, we would forward that to Lee. And then you would make to choose if you have a home or a business. You can also see on that part all of the documents, including what we call the fact sheet, we will discuss on the next slide, or also be prompted to apply online. It also highlights all of the counties that were impacted. We have the darker ones are the primary counties, so that means that they're eligible for physical and economic injury. The ones in the lighter color are contiguous counties that may get affected by the disaster, because although your business may not have damages itself, you have a relationship with another business that did, so that is affecting your capabilities. So all of the contiguous counties are eligible for economic injury disaster loans. So if you want to find out what that is, you can always highlight with the fact sheet. It has all the eligible counties, the type of fund that we have, everything that we discussed here, the parent requirement, the interest rates that apply to that disaster, they tend to change every 2 months. The amount limits, all the mitigation funding information, and we also do refinancing and relocation for homeowner and businesses. That's something, for example, FEMA cannot do, but we can do with our loan. This is an example of the fact sheet for Hurricane Valley, which is the only disaster we have so far in the state of Florida. And you can see the disaster period, the counties that are covered, the application file deadlines, because it's very important to try to put that application before we get into those deadlines. And here you can see the interest rates with no credit available elsewhere and credit available elsewhere. We get a lot of questions about what does that mean. If you are successful enough and have enough assets to qualify for a private institution to give you a loan, and you don't really need to engage with a loan with the government, ironically, we're gonna give you a higher interest rate, which is not that high. In the case for businesses, it would be 8, but for those that doesn't have credit available elsewhere, it's only 4. Most of the businesses get 4. But if you have as a homeowner, you don't really have a need for a disaster loan, we're still gonna give you the loan, but you're not gonna benefit from that lower interest rate. Once you go to the website, you'll be prompted to register your account. Most people that already have a relationship with us will be able to register. But some people may have a capital access loan ID in which you'll be prompted to sign in if this is your first time access in the portal. Now we're going to discuss our home and sole proprietor application. We use the same form for homeowners and sole prop. It's basically the easiest way for you to do an application. And we're going to highlight because it's basically the same process. Once, just a mental note, we still have the slides from the old platform because that is what is available to us. But we're going to push for the new system, and as soon as we get authorization to use the new slides, but they're going to be very similar to this, and the forms are the same. So basically the questions that we're going to ask on the website, although they may look a little bit different or bluer, it's going to be the same as this portal. So the first step would be to choose if it's a business or nonprofit loan or a homeowner's. In that sense, if you are sole prop, you still need to go to a business and nonprofit because you're identifying as a business. Don't get confused that if you're a sole prop, you need to make a homeowner application. That was one of the struggles with not only business owners, but co-workers, that because we use the same form, which is Form 5C, they would prompt people that have sole props to do a homeowner application. That would not be accurate. You have to select the business and nonprofit. So once you start your process as homeowner or renter, you need to establish if the damaged property was your primary residence at the time of the disaster. Both FEMA and SBA only assist with our home disaster loans to primary residence. That doesn't mean you need to be the owner. That means that that was your primary residence and that you spent there more than 6 months of the year and that you have a relationship with the state of Florida in this case. If you spend more time in a different state, you file taxes over there, you vote over there, then we cannot grant you a disaster loan because this is your secondary home. But we have a few exceptions for secondary homes. We can do what is called a relative. So you have someone in your close family that actually occupies that property, we can extend that home disaster loans for you as a primary residence because you have a brother or a son or a daughter that are currently occupying your mom, your dad. So that's one of the exceptions. The other one is if you have it as a rental property, because guess what? That's a business. As long as you report it in your taxes, you will be eligible to get a sole prop disaster loan for that rental property because it's a form of income, and although people don't acknowledge that's a business, it actually is. If you select that on the system, it would prompt you back into the business application. But if you're in the home application, you would continue here. You would also have to indicate the county and the state, and then select the proper natural disaster. It may be the case that you were affected by 2 natural disasters. So you will have to make 2 different applications and try to vouch. For example, in Puerto Rico, we had Hurricane Irma, and then a couple of weeks later, we had Hurricane Maria. The federal government allocates funding for each disaster. So if you're affected by a flood-related damages with Irma, which was the case in Puerto Rico, then any flood-related damages would be covered with that one. But if you were affected by wind damage, which is the case of Hurricane Maria, then you will have to make an application for Hurricane Maria. And they'll work that as companion files, but it's important that you select the proper natural disaster. Once you're able to do that, you're gonna certify first that you're gonna tell us all the truth. Because if not, as any legal process, if you convey information that is false, you may be subject to fraud, and that has civil and criminal purposes. Also, you acknowledge that you're gonna be a part of the process in which you're gonna access your information, and we're gonna create documents on your behalf. So we also have the Freedom of Information Act, which actually empowers you to request to us as part of the federal government to give you a copy of those documents. So here, you will be abiding by the statements that are required by law. The process will start with the disaster home loan and sole proprietor application. So you will have a start button and a few other requirements that you need to accomplish for that application to be successfully submitted. So the first one would be to highlight everything that is on a red asterisk is required. And it's very important that you file that part correctly. So first name, last name, date of birth, everything needs to try and match your information on your tax returns. So it's very important for you to use your first name, not last name, no abbreviations. And if you have changed your name, you need to reflect that. We also can reflect your preferred contact method, but also we have a box for a close relative that doesn't live with you. That's very important to be completed, because sometimes after a disaster, communications are hard to deal with. So maybe if you have a close relative that doesn't live in the disaster area, but can be contacted on your behalf, then they're gonna be able to let you know, because it's easier to communicate between families and the government, so they may be able to convey that message that the loan officer or the inspector is trying to get a hold of you. You would indicate your marital status, and if you're married, then you would be allowed to put that information as well. One important detail, it says household size there. We always clarify, and on the new platform, it's gonna have better wording, is everyone that depends on your income. It's not everyone that lives on your house. You may have your parents in a different part of the house. It may be a duplex, so it's not everyone that occupies the property, it's everyone that is economically dependent of your income. We also have a mailing address, and it's very important to highlight that that mailing address is where you currently are getting mail. Again, after a disaster, you may have to relocate. So for us, if we're gonna send you mail, we want that mailing address to be reflected there. Then you're gonna highlight your income information if you're employed, unemployed, or self-employed. And in that, you're gonna make note of all of your gross income, and that includes alimony, child support, or any kind of income. Also, once you put in your mailing address, we're gonna verify that address with the U.S. Postal Service. So they're gonna suggest if a correction is needed. But if your knowledge that is not needed, then you can disregard the warning. Now we go into the damaged property information. This is where the hurricane actually affected you, or the flood. So here you're gonna dictate the location where you were living at the time of the disaster and what type of damages you had. Real estate, personal property, and something that we include is automobiles. We can cover automobiles for homeowners and businesses. We're gonna verify that you own that property, or if you're a renter, because as mentioned before, if you're a renter, you're only eligible for personal property. You will disclose insurance information, any policies that you have, and any amounts that you may have received. Now we go to the part where you discuss your debts and assets. On the first part, if you don't have any debt, then you have to just click, I have no debt. You're done with that part. But if you have a mortgage, if you are renting, you will disclose the name of your mortgager or your landlord and the monthly payments. If you pay a mortgage and there's another different charges like real estate, HOA, you will disclose that in the different boxes that you have there. On the next part, other debt means anything that you cannot afford to pay off in the next 10 months. So basically, car payments, credit card with a high balance, if you pay them wholly every month, you don't need to disclose them. But if you have a high balance that won't be taken care of itself in 10 months, then you have to disclose them. Very important thing we want to highlight when we ask for your assets is pre-disaster value. And what that means is we want to know how you were faring before the disaster affected you, how much savings you have, how much cash, the value of your personal property, the value of your house if you were to sell it before it was damaged, so we can make that assessment of eligibility. If you have any additional rental properties, then you can disclose that there. Also, it's very important that if you are, as a homeowner, have a FEMA registration number, you include that as part of the application, because that's where we're going to be able to refer you back to FEMA internally. So our system, DLAB, will communicate with the system, NEMIS, letting them know that although you were referred, we were not able to offer you a loan. So that sends you back to them for those possible grants that I mentioned before. On our new system, even if you don't know your FEMA registration number, the system will make an effort to identify that for you, but it may take longer than now. At the end, you'll have to make some disclosures, and these are questions of yes or no. If you answer yes to any of those questions, there a box would be populated for you to give an explanation. For example, have you been bankrupt? You have to, in the last 2 years, you will have to detail what part of the process you are in and any relevant information that we can make that assessment, because it doesn't really disqualify you, but it's information that we need to know before the loan officer determines if you're eligible or not. Lastly, you have a representative information. So if you're doing this application on behalf of another business owner, then that's your opportunity to put your information as a representative. So that means that if I call the 1-800 number to get some information, you will be authorized to do that on behalf of your client or the business owner. So it's very important that if you try to engage in that you put that information there so you don't have any limitations. If not, if you call, they're gonna request you to send a letter by the business owners authorizing you to be added to the account so you can make phone calls and requests by email on their behalf. Lastly, you're gonna consent yet again to the loan process, always highlighting the importance of giving the most truthful information. You have a part for additional comments, any relevant information you want to provide to that loan officer so that they can be put in a position to determine that your eligibility for that loan would go there. Then one of the most important things that we do is the 4506C request. Now on the new system, we're gonna DocuSign that form. It used to be that we had a lot of struggles with people printing the form and not filing it correctly, putting the wrong mailing address, putting the disaster address, not clicking on a check mark for signatory attest that. So now it's gonna be more manageable because it's gonna be online. You don't have to print any of that forms. So something to keep in mind. You have your disaster address where you were at the time of disaster. You may have your mailing address as of right now, but guess what? Last year, when I did my taxes, I was in a different property. So it's very important that the information that we get on that 4506C matches exactly what we had on your tax returns, because the IRS is gonna do a matchup, and if it doesn't match 100%, they're not gonna give us your transcripts, which we use to offer you that disaster loan. So it's very important that in that line, when prompted, do you have a different address, that you complete that, because that is gonna generate the form. So once that information is there, the system will generate a form. It's gonna look similar than this. So you're gonna accept to do an e-sign. And it's very important that at the bottom of the form that you click sign and make sure that you sign the form before submitting. Then once again it's signed, you need to confirm that you're submitting that form, and that will take you completion back to the disaster loan application because you completed that requirement. So for an overview, this is what the form looks like. And hopefully with the new system, you won't have to provide that form unless you need to make a correction. If you forgot to change the address, then you can also have the option to download and print it. But hopefully If you generate the form correctly, then you won't have to suffice that. Just some key important things. First name, last name. If it's a business, the business name goes here instead of first name and last name. We have the current address and the previous address, which is the important part that needs to be generated. Also, the types of transcript that are required. Most sole prop or homeowners are gonna do a 1040. Well, depending if you have an LLC on corporation, that might be at 1120, 1055. You would have to click record account and then the signatory attest. So a lot of people sadly never click on this and you send that by email. There's thousands of emails of people sending this form. And when it takes the time for us to process that, we find out that that checkmark was missed. So that used to create a lot of delays in processing, so hopefully that's gonna be addressed in the new platform. So this is just a reminder of those things. Make sure that the information matches exactly that of your tax return, that the correct tax form is identified. In line 6, that you check the signatory attest box above that signature line. And then if you are married, make sure that you click if you file separate or jointly, because if you file individually, then you have to create a form for each spouse. After you complete that 4506C, yet again you get our truthful information certification section, which you agree, and then you have the chance to either preview or submit the application. Sometimes we have a lot of people that did everything, and you have a green check mark on the left part. But when you don't have a green check mark, it's in submit application. So a lot of people miss that submission right there. So that would create a delay in processing because that application is not submitted. So you'll make sure that you click that submission so you can get this screen here, which reflects your application submission confirmation. It provides you with the application, and that information is also gonna be sent to you by email. So you have a confirmation on the website and on the email about that application being submitted. So now we're gonna discuss the business application, but since I've been talking for a while, maybe we wanna take a 10-minute break, and we can join after you take the other break.
Good lunch.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's a nonprofit,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter what you run. The only thing is that if it's a home, for example, then you have to bridge, if you're gonna apply for the homeowner application or the business application.
Yeah, and
And
that's
just
where
to
I'm
give you
getting
an
confused.
idea.
Yes.
So basically you have your computer, personal computer, but you may have your business computer. So in that sense, the business computer would be part of your inventory equipment as part of your business. So you're eligible to do a business loan for that as special equipment. Like in his case, if you're losing the cameras, the tripods, and everything that he uses to operate his business, although it's at his home, he can get the assistance to replace or repair that equipment that suffered through the disaster.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're
Another
welcome.
question. For nonprofit, since it's nonprofit, in my case, since I'm just starting off, how do you base the revenue criteria? How do you determine if you're eligible based off, for the revenue, for
So basically-
repayment?
Yeah, so basically the loan officer, we don't go deep into it because what we do on the field is help you make that application and close that loan.
Oh,
The loan officer has internal guidelines, but something that I like, and I was gonna discuss further, we need to be put in a position to determine that this loan is gonna impair your nonprofit, your business, or your home.
Right.
So we still need to make an assessment that you're gonna be able to afford that loan on top of your obligations. So if sadly you don't have enough room to pay the loan on top of your basic needs, then it may be out of line. But it's better for you if you have a good standing, good tax returns, you prove that you have a profitable, then for sure we will be able to grant that assistance.
okay.
Yes, sir.
I need you to do me a favor for their benefit, because when a banker tells us, can you afford the loan? See if you can afford the loan. That's a whole lot different conversation than what you're saying when you say, well, you can afford a loan with SBA. The reality of those loans, I was going to let you explain it, but I I guess I can, you can correct me where I need to.
No problem.
The interest rates are so low with the SBA, and the money is spread out so far, you can get it spread out so far that it's very small. You understand what I mean?
Yes, sir.
You can pay $100 and some for a month for a $30,000, $40,000 loan. You can pay $130 a month for it for 10 years with no penalty. Plus, they're gonna give you so many months off without even have to pay and no interest for so many months.
That's 12 months.
12 months the first year.
There you go. See, I know something, but I don't know it all.
Yeah.
There's
So
a
the thing,
12-month deferral process where you do not have any interest accruing and you do not have to make any payments. However, during that 12-month non-interest bearing deferral, if you pay off the loan,
it's
there's
good.
no
You just
penalty.
go away. You just pay what you got, and no interest, no nothing, and it's done,
Right,
you know? That you need to know when you're hearing this.
yes.
Because if you compare their loan to a bank loan, it's gonna throw you out of the water. You're gonna say immediately, I can't afford that, I can't do that.
Right.
And their regs are not as strenuous.
They're what?
They're not as strenuous. They're not as tight, you know, the banks have regulations for qualifying for
regulations.
loans that, you know, you gotta have a 750 credit score, you gotta have this much assets, you gotta have this, you gotta have that. They're different.
Yes.
So you don't wanna get frightened off by the conversation by not even applying because you're comparing them to the banking process. It's the main thing I'm talking about. And I think you ought to spend some time when you explain that to people that, I'm sorry, I know you want to get into this.
I'm just gonna piggyback on what you were just saying. The purpose of this loan is to help the less fortunate,
Got it.
okay? Because if you have a perfect credit score, if you have the perfect financials, or at least financials that will not need our help, you could go anywhere.
And get them.
But our programs and our loans are specifically designed for people that need the help because they're not that successful, their credit score is not that perfect, and we need to get them back up and running.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
See, the value to the country is a successful union increasing the economics of this whole country. It contributes to that success of the country
Right.
and its economics. Your failure don't help the economic structure of this country.
Right.
So it benefits the government to help you be sustainable and profitable, because now you're contributing to the economy of this country. And you're taking it to a whole nother place where, you know, the people that got it all, they're already doing what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
But there's more of you out here than there are of them.
Yeah.
So they can help your population be successful at surviving and maintaining and being stable. That helps America, that helps the country, that helps everybody.
So going back to what Ms. Fred is saying, we take into consideration how much you can afford, and if it needs to be a 30-year loan like they did with the COVID, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna try to push the smaller amount of payment that you can really pay. So we're gonna try to put you in a comfortable position if you really are able to afford the loan. But sadly, and that's just technical advice. A lot of businesses like, and homeowners too, I want to get as many deductions as I can.
Right.
But that works against you, because if you're gonna, let's say you're a homeowner, a renter, and you wanna buy a house, if you're saying to the government that I don't have enough income that is enough for me to get a mortgage, the bank is gonna reject you. The same applies to any business. If you go in the negative, how can we, the government, help you? It would be a disservice, as Amy said, to try to help you, because we're gonna create an additional burden on your business, and we don't really need that for you. So that's the whole mission of the SBA with homeowners and business owners.
So how is the loan reported for business owners? Is it reported on their personal credit or their business credit, like Don's?
So it's on the business.
It's on the business side, not the
Although we do, because it's the federal government, take into consideration your personal information.
Right.
Because one of the alternatives is your business is not really profitable enough for you to make the payments, but you as the owner are. The loan officer may be able to modify that loan into that you can have a joint relationship in that debt, and you can actually pay that loan. So that's why we, in the process, not only ask for your business information, we also ask for every owner of 20%. So that if the business itself doesn't have enough income to pay the loan, we may be able to do it with the owners.
Thank you.
And there's a flip side to that too.
Okay, what's that?
They wanna make sure you ain't got 5 yachts in an estate somewhere, and you just taking advantage of the federal government to get their money, and you got all these country clubs and
Yeah, a lot of
yachts
things
and.
that we have, we're the federal government, so you have a federal obligation to make taxes to the government and to the state. So you cannot expect the government to help you in a disaster if your business is not really engaging in their fiscal responsibilities. So if a lot of businesses struggle because they haven't done their taxes, and it's required for them to have 3 years taxes submitted at the time of the disaster. Obviously, you may have an issue with submitting the latest one, but at least if you had an obligation to do the last 3 years, those last 3 years should be in record. If not, that is gonna create a delay in processing. And we'll do 5 more minutes. So welcome back. Now we're gonna discuss business applications. Give a little bit preview for what, as mentioned, when we have a business, it doesn't matter what kind of business, you would apply from business and nonprofit to start your own application. Keep in mind that you as a homeowner can also make your home application, and if you have more than one business, the only thing that you need to do is to make an application for each business that you have. Maybe you have a sole prop because you have rental properties, and you have an LLC, you want to make one business application per business. So once you prompt that you're a business, the first selection would be sole proprietor, and we clarify that that includes individuals with income properties, because it is, as a matter of fact, a business. Then you would have to choose between a corporation, partnership, nonprofit, limited partnership trust, or LLC, LLP. After that, you would select what kind of damages you suffer, what type of loan are you interested in. So the first checkmark would be real property, and that includes leasehold improvements. We also have business contents, which includes machinery, equipment, inventory, furniture and fixtures, etc. We also have the economic injury disaster loan, which is the one for working capital. And lastly, we have the military service economic injury. That's a very random one because that only applies if we are in a conflict and employees get called to serve in that conflict, and by the loss of employees, you would be eligible for that, but that hasn't happened really in a couple of decades. Yet again, you will be prompted to select the state and the county, and then you would select the applicable disaster that affected you, and if it was more than one, then you will have to create one for each disaster. You also certify that you're gonna complete the application with the most truthful information, and that you are gonna abide by the statement required by law, and that also includes that you have a right to get a copy of your documents by the Freedom of Information Act. It looks very similar as the home application. You're gonna start with the SBA Form 5, and you would click on Start. And as you can see, you don't have the green check marks yet, but once you complete each part, you're gonna have that check mark that you need to look for. This first part of the form is gonna populate from the responses that you provided on that first question, and it's gonna highlight what you're applying for and the organization type. Also, you're gonna get prompted in box number 3 to put the applicant's legal name. And when we say the applicant's legal name, we're doing a business application. So what we want there is the name of your entity, your LLC, your corporation. That's the name that we want there. And something to keep that in mind is that we're also asking for your EIN. So this is not for the owners of the business. This is for the business itself. If you have a corporation but operates on a different trade name, you have the opportunity to also highlight that in the application. Also, you're gonna put your mailing address, keeping in mind that it might have changed after the disaster. And you're gonna determine if your business property is leased or owned. If you have the same mailing address, you would highlight that. If you have a different mailing address, you would select accordingly. you have more than one property, you also have the opportunity of adding as many properties as the entity owns. Then we want to highlight that on part 17 is where you actually are going to disclose the owner information. And that may be an owner of 100% or any owner of 20% or more. So if you have more than one owner, you would have to add every additional individual owner, highlighting the percentage that they own. And if the person has a different mailing address than the one on the business, you would disclose that in that part. Now, we have cases that the entity, a corporation may own another corporation, so you would check that they don't have an individual owner, so you would be prompted to put a business entity owner. So in that case, you highlight which entity owns and what's the percentage of that ownership. If it's more than one corporation, then you will have to add every entity into the list. At the end of this application, you're also going to be prompted to respond questions of character. So as mentioned before in the home application as well, prop, if there's an affirmative, you're going to get a box to give an explanation. If you're not interested in mitigation, you would highlight in box 20. And again, very similar to the sole prop application, if there's a press representative that is doing this on behalf of the business, you would disclose that to give permission to SBA to actually engage with that person that is doing the application on behalf of the business. Page 4, highlights the certification and statements for you to consent to the loan application. Also, box 22, you would also have the opportunity to submit any additional information that is relevant to that loan officer. As mentioned before, once you have that part completed, you have the check mark, but then you can always update any information that you need to correct before the submission. Next, you're going to do a personal financial statement, which is SBA form 413. On the previous system, you would be able to download it, print it, and upload it, but that also generated a few prompts, so hopefully this form will also be able to be entered as this one, and you should be able to DocuSign the form. So for personal income, it's for those owners of 20% or more. So if it's one owner, then we need a personal financial statement for that owner. If there's more than one owner, then we need one for each. So basically, you're going to disclose the salary, the real estate income, net investment income, and any other type of income. And then you have a box there to provide a description, if it's child support, alimony, pension, or social security. Also, you're going to be able to list if you own real estate, the business itself, you as an individual own more properties on top of the business. So if you do not own real estate, you can highlight that. But if you own more than one property, then you will disclose each individually by adding them. Also, you're going to disclose your personal assets, stocks, bonds, assets, savings accounts, IRA, any automobiles, real estate, account notes. So you would be able to complete each trust accordingly. And if you have more than one stock or bond, you would be able to add each accordingly. If you have life insurance or other personal property or other assets, you also have an opportunity to add them to that application. Also, we're going to include personal debt. As mentioned before, this is what the loan officer may use to determine if you, as an owner, can afford the loan instead of the business. So you would disclose those payables to any bank, any debts, accounts payables, loans on life insurance, loan mortgages, etc., and any contingent liabilities. This form currently can be downloaded, completed, and uploaded. And for example, if you have an accountant that actually knows that, it's very convenient to download all those forms first, have them pre-fill them so that you have them available to be submitted with your application. Once you do the personal financial statement, now we do the SBA form 2202, which is a schedule of liabilities. That schedule liabilities, you can respond in the portal if you have no debts. You don't have any debts, the schedule I liabilities doesn't need to be, it's gonna be created with no debts. So it would be as easy as marking I have no debts. But if you do so, you'd have to add every creditor and put as much information as possible, highlighting that everything that is has an asterisk is required, such as the current balance, the payment amount, and if it's monthly or yearly. This form also can be downloaded from the website, and this is just a model, so if your finance person or your accountant actually have a different form that he already complies, you just need to submit one as of the earliest, so we can process that form as well. Now, businesses need 45016 not only for the business itself, it also needs a 45016 for every owner. So if it's also a subsidiary or if it's owned by a corporation, we're gonna need 45016 for any entity that has a relationship with the business. Also to keep in mind that the system is gonna generate, but if you need to clarify the last previous address on the tax return, you need to do that before the system generates the form. Also, when you're doing the 45016 for the business, you will disclose who's the person that is authorized to obtain that tax information, being the president, secretary, etc. And you would also make sure that you check mark the signatory attest that you have the authority to submit that form. As highlighted before, the system is going to prompt you to accept to e-sign the form. You will have to make sure that you sign that form and you would confirm that you did so we can go back to your application portal. We also highlight the 450 form, and we also include a link for your convenience if you need to access in case you needed to make a correction. But hopefully we won't have to do that on the new system. As mentioned before, make sure that the information on the 45016 matches exactly on the tax return submitted to the IRS, in this case the business name, the address, and the EIN. Also, make sure that the correct tax form is identified on line 6 for the business and taxes, also to check boxes. As mentioned before, if the business that affected you, was affected by the disaster, now is different, you will still need to make your application on behalf of that business or referencing that so we can get those tax returns. Then, when you have the opportunity to engage with the loan officer, you would highlight that after the disaster, you did some reorganization and you're gonna provide any documentation saying now from a sole provider, I'm now an LLC or a C Corp, etc. Now we're gonna highlight that you always have the option to make paper applications, and we're gonna provide you with the links in case that out of necessity you need to do one. That would be the 5C home application, which is the same one that we do as sole proprietor. Just keep in mind that here would highlight primary residence, sole proprietor for physical damages, or sole proprietor for economic injury. And you can actually mark these two. So basically the questions here to be answered are the signs that we highlighted on the portal, and are gonna be the same on the new lending platform. So for your reference, also, it's good that if you're unable to make the application, but you can pre-fill that before you go to a disaster recovery center, that's gonna benefit the customer service rep that is gonna be able to assist you because they are just gonna basically do some data entry for you. The business application is the Form 5. This is the one that we use for business entities. It basically highlights all the information that we discussed before, and we'll also provide you with a link here in case you need to get a copy of that one. This will be the second page of that form. Basically mirrors the application with the questions and the representative. In the case of paper applications, it's very important that they are signed and dated, wet signatures. The personal financial statement, just to give you an idea, you can always access that through a portal, and we'll provide you with a link so that you can familiarize yourself. Sometimes we have business entities, and we start to do the applications, they wouldn't know the answer to many of those questions. So what we do is we'll give a paper, hey, go to your accountant or your finance person, get that pre-filled, whatever applies, and then come back so we can submit that as part of your application because it's required. That would be the second part of the form, and the third page. This is a model of the schedule of liabilities. If you have no liabilities, you just make the form, sign it, and say none, or just throw some lines on it. If you have liabilities, then you would disclose them. And this is just a model. If your accountant or finance person creates one by themselves, you can also provide that schedule of liabilities. This is a form that may be required for economic injury disaster loan. Sometimes it's hard to establish the economic hardship that you suffer after the hurricane. So we will try to make our best to make that assessment based on your tax returns. But if not, the loan officer has the option to request you to complete that form, and it basically gives you the opportunity to do a simple profit and loss statement and highlight the months and the years to do a comparison on how different things are now than they were before. So as a reminder, we always have 3 ways to apply. We can apply in person, receive one-on-one help from a customer service, just like Amy, Enrique, or me. I've been here since December, because before that I was in Puerto Rico, dealing with Hurricane Fiona. But once that disaster ended, I started here in December, and I'm still here working on this disaster. But I was in the biggest disaster recovery center. We saw hundreds of people daily, and we would help them get those applications submitted or overcome any of the issues that they may have. You can also apply online. We had a lot of people that were able to make that initial application online. And also the purpose of this training is to put you in a position that if you can help your co-workers, your fellow business owners, in the case of the Chambers of Commerce or this entity, we have power and we have the availability to start this process, the sooner the better. That's part of the goal of this training. You don't need to wait for a 24 to 48 hour period that we are able to establish a business recovery center, or for FEMA to establish them sometimes in 72 hours or a week or 2, because sometimes it takes a while for FEMA to actually find suitable places to do the disaster recovery centers. So if, let's say in this location, we're lucky to have power or a generator, and we can start that process for homeowner and business owners, that actually promotes recovery and resilience, because the first that do it are the first that are gonna get that disbursement in a matter of weeks. Lastly, you can also complete a paper application, another to SBA, but it's just a recommendation that if you could do it online, you're gonna get a fast response. For example, if you're one of the persons that cannot afford a home loan, then that referral to FEMA is gonna be automatic in 24 to 48 hours after you made the application. If you send that by mail, it may take longer than that. So basically that's highlighting the mailing address, or you can also send your paper application by email. That's another means that you have. Always highlighting some personal information so that the person can actually get a hold of you to let you know that the application was submitted on your behalf. So we have a key interesting situation right now. We're out of the deadline for Hurricane Ian. So basically, we start the day that the declaration was approved. Once that is done, usually FEMA establishes a 60-day physical filing period, and we follow suit. This is a conversation between the governor, the state, and the federal government. So on that conversation, as it happened with the disaster, it can get extended 30 to 60 additional days. So in this case, we were able to push that deadline until January of this year. So the disaster actually happened in September. They did a few extensions. But sadly, the government, in agreement with FEMA, determined that physical filing periods were going to be done by January 23rd of this year. Us, SBA, we provide a 15-day grace period in which you can put in your application on that website with no questions asked. So you would continue to do that application with no issues. So even if you had challenges to submit that application during the 60 days or the 120 days because of the extensions, once it's determined that we have a deadline, you are going to be able to do your home application or business application for physical damages for 15 days. But guess what? We also provide 30 additional days on that platform for you to be able to submit that application but you need to submit an explanation. And the guideline for that is that it needs to be circumstances beyond your control, and we're gonna discuss that later. After those 30 days that the portal closes, you still have the option to send a paper application, because it may be that the reasons that you are not applying took longer than that. But sadly, the website is not going to, the portal is not going to be open, but you can always submit a paper application as long as you have valid justification. In that paper application, we would have to include, as part of the documents that are required, a late filing justification letter. And that, the applicant needs to provide that justification in detail. The reasons why they missed the filing deadline, including specific dates if applicable. A lot of people just, hey, it was just that I found out that I was referred to SBA, although you get a letter once you get registration with FEMA. So sadly saying that I wasn't aware, although you got many emails, or you went to the disaster recovery center and they sent you to SBA, but you understood that since you don't have a business, you don't have to go, those kind of reasons are not valid. Ignorance sadly doesn't play out in this process. It needs to be detailed. And if you have dates disclosing your process on why you were not able to that application within that time frame, the more information that we get provided, the better. We will only accept that application if it is determined that that late filing resulted from reasons beyond the applicant control. So it's very important to highlight. Again, a good example. The disaster actually caused you so damages enough for you to land in a hospital. So you've been in a coma for a couple of months, and you just woke up from that ailment, and you find out that you were not able to register with FEMA or SBA because you were medically impaired. That would be an example of circumstances beyond your control. You were not physically able to do that because you were medically impaired. Maybe you're a soldier and you were detailed in a different country as part of your service. So if it takes 1 year for you to come back to your home because you were deployed, then that's our reason beyond your control for you to still be able to submit an application. But obviously, we don't make any of those determinations in the field. Those determinations are done by the processing department, and it's my encouragement up to this date. If you have some valid reasons of circumstances beyond your control, you can still make an application, but we may reserve the right not to accept it. Any questions so far? Okay, so now we're going to discuss different application scenarios that we encounter in the field. Those are the challenges that you find after you get approved, withdrawn, or declined from our disaster loan program. First, we want to start with an approval, which is the good news. So let's say that you get approved for a loan, but that money isn't enough. Maybe you were lucky enough that your insurance company gave you an amount of money, so in obligation for that, because of the obligation benefits that I discussed before, if we have already given you the money, then the insurance company will pay that part on your behalf to lower the amount of the loan. But if you don't get that money after, we're going to reduce the amount of the loan. Let's say that the insurance company paid you out. Let's say we approved you for $100,000, but insurance gave you $50,000. Well, we're not going to give you that $100,000 loan. We're going to give you the $50,000 that you still need. So it's important that if after that scenario in which we addressed initially that your damages were $100,000, but you got $50,000 from your insurance or $50,000 from us, then if you say, well, I'm gonna need $25,000 because $100,000 gets me here, and I have quotes and estimates because of the inflation that now is gonna cost more, then you can provide those documents and say, hey, this is how much I spent so far, this is how much I'm gonna spend, and this is how much additional I'm gonna need. So you need to put us in a position to increase that loan. And in my experience, most people that do it, as long as they provide the information, they get it. So it's a matter of asking. Nothing should deter you from asking. And it's a simple process. You will have to make a letter explaining that, hey, I need more money because this, is and that, and I have these support documents that support my claim. But also for any process, we also need updated for FAST 066. So So that if we have a need to review your latest tax returns, it may be that you started your loan process in October of last year, but you need the money now. But guess what? You have up to 2 years to rigor for that increase. But that may show that you actually have a better taxes for this year and also showcase that you can afford the increase of that loan. You would also submit the documentation, and there's some examples: contractor estimate, contract of repairs, made to subject to SBA approval, and a total project cost, which is substantiated with the documentation as well. And you can email that to disasterconsumersurvey@sba.gov. You can send it by mail, or you do that address right there, but I would advise you to send it by email first. And also, once you have that application number, any communication between you and the SBA, put that application number in the subject of the email. It's gonna be easy to identify your loan officer, your case manager, or where your loan currently stands if it's in servicing. So, you got the loan, but you don't really need it anymore. You think that you would rather do that with your savings, or you got some grants that are not duplication of benefits that you wanna use, you can always decide not to accept the SBA loan. No one is obligated. I always highlight, you're always free to make an application. It doesn't cost anything to you. We're gonna handle the process for you. We're gonna give you the loss verifier and everything, and we're gonna put in a position of giving you an offer. But you can always refuse that offer and say, you know what, at this time, I don't need it, so I wanna cancel this process. But the good thing is that you have an idea of how much money we would have given you in the case that you accepted the loan. So you are not obligated to get that loan if you don't think that that's a solution. So you can, don't feel like when you start the process that you are gonna have to finish it. At some point, if you decide, for example, my business was not really doing well before the disaster, and this disaster loan, although it can bring me home, my business is not really gonna do better. So the disaster loan is not really my thing. This is not really what I need. I may need access to capital, I may need other stuff, so I don't wanna create a burden on my business on the disaster loan if I'm not really sure if I'm gonna have a business after the fact. So those are the personal decisions that you make, but just know that you are not obligated to accept that loan. You can always cancel an approved loan, and you can do that by, if you have a secured loan, executing that notice of right to cancel, or as easily as sending a written request to your case manager, which you can do by email, you can do by mail, or you can actually call or go to a center and have that message conveyed to them. You remember that we have the 1-800-366-6303 to contact case manager, to process department. You can always call the 1-800-659-2955, which is a very important number for SBA disaster loans. So if you need any support, that's the number you're always gonna call. So, you cancel that loan because the insurance company was promising you that they wanna make you whole, but guess what? There's depreciation. Oh, actually, that was not a flood, that was surge. Actually, that water was not even flood or surge, that was wind-driven rain. So they have a lot of technicalities for them to be able to say to you, that's not covered. So it may be that of the promises, you were not thinking that you needed the SBA loan, but now you need it. That's why we have a process for you to request the reinstatement of your approved loan. And it's as simple as making the request in a letter and submitting the 4506 form. As easy as that, and you can go back into track into getting the loan that you need, also reflecting any of the changes if you need an increase, a decrease, or whatever may be your need. So we're gonna talk about withdrawn. And a lot of people get confused. What that means within SBA. Withdrawn basically means that we have not been put in a position to actually make a decision. We cannot either approve or decline. We don't have enough information for us to be able to make that determination. So usually a loan officer will call you, but if you don't answer, they're gonna send you an email. But if you don't check your emails, like often we have people come in there, I don't know anything about my loan, and then we check and they had voicemails and they had emails. It's very important that you follow up attempts of communication. Oh, I don't answer 1-800 numbers. Well, guess what? That 1-800-659-2955 is the number that's gonna possibly call you. Or a random number, because we have loss verifiers that have different phones from Atlanta, Georgia, Virginia, so you may get a random
area codes. We encourage everyone that applies for an SBA loan to answer the phone. The SBA personnel will have your personal information. You won't have to disclose any personal information to us because we already have them. So if your loss verifier is trying to get in contact with you to go to your house or your business to make that assessment, they're gonna try at least 3 times in 3 days. And they're gonna send you emails, like they're gonna leave you voicemails. But if not, what's gonna happen, they're gonna withdraw your application. That means that you're gonna go back in the line as the first step with every people that is applying. Where if you answer to that person would have gone to your house today or tomorrow, and then by the end of the week you have an offer of how much money we can actually provide. So it's very important that we stay vigilant to all the communication attempts. Even if it's a funny number, we need to answer to try to make sure that the process moves on. Let's say that sadly, your application got withdrawn because they were not able to find you. Like, for example, in the example that we discussed, the loan officer actually called you, hey, I need additional documentation from your change from sole prop to LLC. They're gonna give you 7 days to get that. Sadly, if they're on a time frame, so if you're not able to provide that, this is what they're gonna do on your behalf because you weren't able to provide the documents, we're gonna withdraw, because guess what? That opens the door for you to have 6 months from the original date of that decision to actually provide what is needed. In the case of the loss verifier, the only thing that you need to say, hey, I'm available on these other phones, I'm available from this time to this time, trying to make it easier for the loss verifier to get a hold of you. It may be that you don't have good signal in your phone when you're in your dwelling, so hey, don't call me to this number, call me to that number. Information like that can support reopening your case and make it easier for that loss verifier to be able to find you. So you would also create that letter saying, please reopen my case. Do the acceptance of my case. And obviously provide information that overcomes the decision of the withdrawal. So if you're missing a document, you just need to provide the document that was requested. You also have to provide a 4506C. As I mentioned, that's a very integral, important part of our process. We need your most updated tax returns. So per policy, we always we put a stop into an application, be a decline, withdrawn, increase or whatever, you'll need to submit a 4506C current. You cannot reuse the old ones. And then that can be email, and that can also be mail or fax. But something to keep in mind, especially for the homeowners, a withdrawn application will not generate a referral back to FEMA. We're not gonna tell FEMA we declined them, so there may be eligible for grants, because we haven't been able to decide. So a lot of people get confused and say that putting themselves in the position to get withdrawn is the same as a decline. Well, no, you're gonna be in limbo. You are not gonna be referred to FEMA or any other state partners because your application is still pending. Now we're gonna talk about decline, which is really what a lot of people look into if they're gonna be approved for decline. So the first reason that we're not able to, as mentioned a little bit before, decline you is to lack of repayment ability. So basically what that means is that you have not shown, the applicant has not shown the business the ability to repay all current debts and an additional SBA loan. So as mentioned before, if you're in the negative, SBA is not going to put you in a position to suffer additional circumstances because of an SBA loan. So with that said, we're going to decline you to lack of repayment ability. But you can always request a reevaluation request. A very simple way that is done is through a letter. One of the biggest scenarios, instead of $100,000 for my personal income, I put $10,000 because I skipped the zero. So what I need to do, well, by mistake, and now the new system is going to be able to let you those corrections online. This system, sadly, you will have to do this process. But the general idea is there that you can fix that decline with relevant information. For example, a lot of people, instead of putting the 8 people that were in the house as income dependent, but actually you just have 2 minor children, your wife and a child. So you don't have a lack of repayment ability because the other people that occupy your property are in a separate dwelling and don't depend on your income. So you can explain that and the decision can be overturned. Or we also give you 6 months. You had a new job, or you got a promotion and now, or you paid off some debt that you had at the time. That can put you in a position to be reevaluated. So just make a letter requesting a reevaluation, provide documents, especially, just don't say I earn more money and send a letter. You need to provide proof. If you have a statement, a certification for your employment, of how your income has changed, all of those things are necessary to overcome that decision. We also need the necessary 4506 form, correctly completed, and then you can send that by email or by mail. And this is the type of decline that may send a referral back to FEMA, because you're not under circumstances to afford a disaster loan. So if you have a need based on them, this is not a guarantee that if we decline you, you're gonna get money. You may be eligible, because your mission is to make your house habitable. So in the sense of homeowners, if they can do that with $500, that's what you're gonna get. The maximum money that FEMA tends to give for someone that lost completely their house is up to $40,000, versus us that we give $500,000. That's a big gap that they can sadly not cover. We cover fences, garages, even gardens. So that referral to FEMA may not be the best solution. Maybe getting a joint applicant and get that application approved for you might be your best choice. And that's something, another way that you can overcome that lack of repayment. A lot of people think that, hey, I work for my wife doesn't. But if I put my income, they're gonna give me the loan. So I'm gonna put my application with my wife, that doesn't work, she has a housemaker, so I'm gonna be declined, gonna be sent by FEMA. Sadly, that's not the case. You cannot really make that argument, because if you're married, we take in consideration both of the people's income. So we need that other person, and we're gonna highlight in some keynotes. But it's very important that if you're married, you disclose that information of your spouse, because although we may be able to refer you back to FEMA, when they see that's only one spouse, there's no grants. We need to see both spouses. So then the other way that you can overcome that decision is to actually make a joint application, adding that spouse that was left out, and then we do the determination if that income of both spouses is enough or not in order to refer you back to FEMA. You also need a 4506C, and in the case that you are adding a joint applicant or that spouse was left out, then if they file separately or as a spouse or it's unrelated to you, they need a 4506C. If you file jointly, you just need a 4506C that includes both spouses. And also you can send that by email, highlighting your application number, or you can send it by mail. And this type of decline may generate a referral back to FEMA, as mentioned before. Now, the application may have been declined due to the credit. And basically the guideline is the credit history is not acceptable to SBA. And that doesn't mean that we have a specific credit score. We make an analysis as a whole. So even if you have poor credit, as long as it's not very bad credit, we may be able to offer that loan for you, because as I mentioned before, we are trying to give this disaster loan program for the underprivileged, for the people that need it the most. So we don't have a set guideline of is it 550, 580, but it can go as low as those numbers. But the most important thing is that you have an acceptable credit history. If you defaulted in your student loans, that may be a strike. And also it's one of the questions that we do out of your character. If you had a previous SBA obligation that you did not fulfill, that may derail the disaster loan application. So some things to keep in mind, that if you have the need to apply for the SBA disaster loan program as a homeowner, as a business, try to settle any issues that you may have with the federal government for you to put that loan officer in the position to offer that loan to you. And as well, you'll access that letter of decline and see what it states, and try to provide all the documentation that you can. For example, if you acknowledge that you have a 300 credit score, but now it's 600, you can provide a copy of the credit report. If you're going to add a joint applicant that has better credit, you can attempt to do that. So all of the documents that you can submit that can overcome that decision needs to be provided, as well as a 45060. This decline may also be one for homeowners that generate grants from FEMA. Lastly, an application can be declined for any other reason. Policy issues, for example, FEMA asks you that because you suffer through Irma, you need to keep flood insurance. At that time, you do not take any kind of loan with SBA. So this is our first time engaging with you because the grants that FEMA was able to offer you were good enough, but they required you, because you're in a flood zone, to have that flood insurance. Guess what? That flood insurance is to be there 10 years. 5 years on, we have Hurricane Ian. And now you're gonna come to apply to SBA because your damages are bigger and you're not eligible for the grant. Guess what? Per policy, we're not able to offer you because you don't comply with that requirement that the federal government has for you. So it may be character issues, it may be policy issues, it may be that this is not your primary residence, as mentioned before. You don't live in the state of Florida, this is your secondary home. You need to show us that you vote here, you do taxes here, and you spend more than 6 months out of the year here. So if you can prove all that, you can overcome those declines as well. Make a letter, submit a 45060, and submit all the documentation that can overcome that decision, and you can do that by email, or you can do it by mail. But think that these type of declines are not really gonna negate you to FEMA for possible grants, because if you're, this is not your primary residence, there's no way for you to be able to prove that. So you're not gonna get either a loan or FEMA, because it really needs to be your primary residence, just to give that example. Lastly, we include on the presentation the information, yet again, of our processing development center with the phone number and the mailing address. And we also have the customer service center, the 800-695-2955, which is very important for you guys to have on your phone. And also the email address, which is disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. Here we have some of the most frequent questions. My loan was approved, but it has not been funded. Well, you have a case manager, you want to make sure that that happens. So applicants should contact their case manager by phone, or if unsuccessful, they can call the customer service center for them to leave them a message, or you can also email the case manager if they provided you with the email, or you can email the disaster customer service. What is the status of my application? Those disaster recovery centers were closed, the business recovery centers were closed, and people like me and Amy may not be here. So you can always contact that 1-800 number 659-2955 to get the status for your application, or you can always email disastercustomerservice@sba.gov with a reminder that if you have an application number, you should include that on the email subject line. Any last questions? If we don't have any other questions, we thank you for your time. We really appreciate the opportunity by Ms. Calloway and Mr. Ford to present for you. This is a part of our efforts into long-term recovery and resilience. We have relationships with FEMA, with our business partners such as Small Business Development Center, SCORE, and other state agencies. So if you have any other need for us to provide any technical advice, any kind of assistance, feel free to make a request so we can make that happen. Again, thank you for your time. And have a great day.
Can we get this in first?
Thank you, Brad. I will look for you.